It's preparing it.
It says meeting is now streaming on live YouTube on my end. So.
Okay. Hey, everybody. I have not tried this live thing, so I hope we're on. It says we're live.
It's preparing it.
Okay. So I need to shut it off so it doesn't do
now streaming on live
a feedback.
YouTube on my end. So.
Okay, great. Well, hello, everybody. I hope you can see us. If not, we'll just have to pre-record and upload. But I'm so excited to be here with my dear friend, Seth Pruzansky. And we just have an awesome co-creative project that we're looking to do. It's called Conversations for a Brighter World. That name might change, but I feel that's such a good title for where we are right now. And Seth and I go way back. I've done a few interviews with him. He has survived the impossible. We both have in common that we've gone over insurmountable obstacles in life. And so we both possess a very unique sort of approach to the way to navigate adversity and come out the other end empowered. And you're like unbelievable, like positive energy and so much wisdom after so much that could easily break a person and maybe keep them in a sort of victim loop or endless trauma. So this is why it's so amazing, because I think people are having such a hard time navigating these times, that having this kind of encouragement and reminders and people with, experience in the realm of adversity, is huge. Like, for example, you were in prison, you lost everything. And being a very sensitive, empathic type soul, being in that environment must have been crazy. So we'll kind of, be referring to our own stories. We're very transparent, and we're going to bring up themes that are very significant in these times. But I just want to hand it over to you as far as kind of what your intention and vision is. And then, I'll share a little bit, about mine, and we'll just, kind of see where that takes us. So welcome, Seth. And you're also author of name your book.
The Fight to Enlighten, Initiation Through the Heart is the Only Way to Win.
Yes. And we'll be putting those links in the description. And so kind of your thoughts about this co-creative project and what we can, share with people from your perspective. What are your thoughts and what are you feeling about all of it?
Well, before we start, I just want to say, with you, in that feeling that people are having right now, where they're we go through stuff and we are like, oh my God, am I going to break? Am I going to break? And it's okay to break, just to let people know, I've gone through some serious stuff that broke me. And it was the resistance to not wanting to be broken that kept me in a state of trauma. It was allowing myself to just be like, all right, you know what? Break me, let it all go, let it crumble to pieces. And I'm just going to be all right with it. That gave me the strength back. It came back to me, but it took literally just being like, all right, throw my hands up. I don't give a fuck, whatever, it can all go. So I just want to say that. But with you and I, it's funny because when you and I met, Laura and I had this kind of co-creative kind of chemistry, almost like a band would have, when two musicians recognize whoa, wow, I recognize your masteries on this particular instrument. And the other one's like, yeah, I recognize your masteries on this. Let's create some music together. Let's make something happen and make it sound good. We had the same kind of thing, but we're like, you know what? Let's create some kinds of conversation, some improvised, greatness kind of thing that lifts people above and beyond the confines that are both self-perceived and that we've been conditioned into us, and really get them to realize that this co-creative capacity that you and I are engaging with each other is in everybody. And so this project is who else can play music with us, right? We're not pointing fingers and saying, oh, fuck that person, forget this. And this. We're like, let's do something great together. Let's have conversations. Let's bring out the best in one another, because last time I checked, no matter what anybody thinks or believes, we've all got a beating heart. We've all got pretty much the same organs. We all live on this beautiful garden-like planet that most of us want to be more in alignment with. So let's focus on that. So that's kind of what this project is.
Definitely. And not giving our power away. I mean, this is a huge growth period for humanity, and recognizing that really just doesn't work. It leads to nothing but disappointment. A new leader comes in, lots of maybe positive aspects to that particular individual, and that's awesome, and deserves a lot of our support. But what can we do on a ground level? What can we do in our own personal lives to play the role that we need to play? Because we can't just sit back on the sidelines. I really like Dr. Shiva's approach, and it's very similar to kind of what we're bringing to the table as far as just personal empowerment. It's up to us.
Yeah.
So that's so important to focus on. And yeah, we'll just, kind of cover different themes. We have a subscription. It's Cosmic Gaia. So Seth is going to be a part of that with me, and we're going to do Q&A. So if you want to sign up for that, the details are in the details are going to be in the description. And for $15 a month, you can interact with, Q&As. We'll probably do 1 or 2 a week. We might start off with once a week or 1 a week, and then the live part of it. So that'll be in addition to the stuff that I've been doing there with, doing mini readings, astrology and tarot. And I'm sure we'll bring slides and different things that we can look at, mini presentations even. So the sky's kind of the limit. And I just think it's just really good, for us to team up. I think the isolation people are feeling, the confusion, not knowing who to trust, not knowing what to do in their personal lives as far as, should I stay with that job? Should I compromise myself and go against something that might not be in one's best interest, like, as we know, getting the jab or anything like that. How can we just help reroute ourselves out of the matrix and into the true organic creation that, like you're talking about, getting closer to the earth. And you have worked very closely with the earth. You have the water consciousness movement. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, when you look, we're water. We're all water beings. We're essentially like water with consciousness animating that water. And so to me, water is that anomalous, miraculous substance. It's almost like the element that's between the physical world that we think we perceive with our normal human senses, and it's non-physical. It has like non-physical properties, because when somebody is able to relax themselves enough and get beyond the confines of who they think they are, and they experience themselves as pure consciousness, which everybody can do, it's nothing more than just a learned skill, then you start to become aware that your consciousness itself moves and vibrates much like water. It has the same kind of sensations. And so the more you become aware of that, the more you realize they're kind of inseparable. It's like a chicken before the egg kind of thing. But this consciousness is magnetized to the water of our being. The more you allow yourself to kind of zoom out and feel what that's like, instead of trying to think about it and figure it out, the more it leads you into the experience of what that actually is. And that's very liberating, because that's actually more real, as according to what's happening in our bodies, what's happening to our personalities. It's more real than 99.9999% of the stuff that everybody is focused on, because everybody's focused outwardly on this problem, that problem, this thing, the other thing. And we forget that in us all is this miraculous life force that is gifting us the opportunity to exist. And if we start giving attention inwards, paying attention to it, it starts paying attention to us. And then we feel it, we become embodiments of it. And the more we do this, even if it's just a little bit, the greater we feel connected to what is actually going on, meaning universal law, natural law, and it's like there's infinite dimensions and worlds at all times that are trying to peer through us, but we're so resistant to all of it. We don't realize we're resistant to it because we have this tunnel vision that is focused on everything external from us. So it's dialing that back, zooming out, trusting that everything is okay. If emotions come up, let them come up. Feel them. It's literally just living in complete surrender and allowance of everything, while at the same time having this little brief idea that there's some kind of miraculous thing happening, because there is. I'm not beating my heart. You're not beating your heart. There's a miracle happening in each and every one of us. And when you consciously remember that that's happening, suddenly you start to connect and communicate with it and it comes to life through your human personality. And if I can do it, you can do it, everybody on here can do it. What kind of world would that create, right?
Yeah. Well, it's been quite a week. We've had a predominance of water energy lighting up. The Sun, Venus, and Neptune planets have traveled very closely together in the sign of Pisces. Yesterday, we had a new moon in Pisces and the sun's in Pisces. And there's a lot of tension between Saturn and Uranus. And that just creates, you know, it can create anxiety, panic attacks, and a feeling of a struggle with the tyranny we're dealing with on the planet, and this need for liberation and freedom. And so the emotional sensitivity being so heightened, you know, people might have felt really overwhelmed by the emotions that have come up, but that Pisces and Neptune energy connects us with the creative imagination. So if we can release our emotions and face them, you know, then we, you know, clear them. It's sort of like clearing the astral, that phase of moving through the astral, where we might run into archons or astral entities, or our fears or anxieties, or where we have a lot of nonsense sort of dreams in the astral that are more, they're not very profound. They might just be just a lot of fragmented thoughts and fears that, you know, reflected back, needing to be purged. But like when we allow ourselves that, Neptune takes us into the full spectrum of frequency, but requires us to just clear like different, you know, barriers that keep us from the next level of our greater emotionality, which is more intuitive, more psychic, more mystical, more connected with, you know, something beyond the lower emotionality that we can easily get trapped in when we overly absorb or identify with the outer world, right? So having such a predominance of water, I wonder how everybody's been feeling this week. It's been so intense, but yeah, it's sort of like when we clear our emotions or cry, it's like we're putting it through a purification system, you know, kind of like, it's no longer being contained, which can make one prone to contamination. I mean, any thoughts kind of come up for you around that? Because, you know, it's like kind of if you have a stagnant pool of water and no energy is moving, and it's just, you know, kind of things are being thrown at it, you know, it can't clear itself. It can't, you know, like rapids or running water can help clear. Like we need the flow in order to purify, right? So it's okay to cry. I mean, I've been an emotional, I don't want to say wreck, but it's been a very emotional week. And Neptune also is very empathic. So the challenge of not taking on everybody's stuff, you know, is a whole other thing too. So yeah, that everyday maintenance of the water element, especially in these particular times with so many planets in Pisces, needs to be looked at. And it requires us getting space and solitude too, right? If we're having a hard time with boundaries with people, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people say that, they're like, oh, I have to work 9 to 5, I have to do this. But it's like, put in some earplugs, even just for a few minutes, and just practice deep breathing, right? And doing that regularly, even just a little bit every day, it makes a big difference. And a lot of people don't even do that, you know? But I want to ask you something, because when you're talking about the planets and what they signify and how they're represented, what about the upper octaves of what they represent? Because with astrology, a lot of people will focus on kind of like the obvious of what the conjunctions and everything are pertaining to at that moment in perceived time. But what about the upper octaves, the potentials of that?
Well, that's, yeah. And that's what I really focus on, especially in my presentations. And like you're talking about, you know, the metaphor of music, and Neptune's very much connected with the multidimensional. So musicians and artists tend to have a predominance of Neptune energy, because it allows one access to, you know, these, you know, higher dimensions. So if we are not reaching those higher dimensions, we tend to kind of loop in trauma patterns, negative feedback loops, and we just keep hitting our head on an obstacle, and we don't experience the higher levels of these planetary bodies. It's similar to us as humans. We have what one would call maybe our lower mind and our higher mind. Well, we want to integrate that polarity. So the lower mind isn't low as in detached or disconnected. It's allowing that greater circulation to come in. And that integration of polarity helps us to leap into these higher octaves of planetary energies when we see the shadow side of what that planet represents and the blessings of what it holds. And we allow ourselves to sort of work with both, so that we can become senior to the lower forces, and we're not constantly being thrown around between, you know, the highs and lows, where we're like super amped and feeling all like everything's awesome. And then all of a sudden one crashes because some reality check or something disappointing might come through. So getting to the higher octaves of something like Neptune and every other planet has its own shadow and higher octaves. But for Neptune, the lower octave is self-undoing, addiction, depression, being lost in the illusion, only like just having a very limited viewpoint. The highest octave of Neptune is the creative imagination, the mystical realms, the multidimensional, accessing the creative imagination, where we're literally drawing from the resources of our creativity and our imagination, which we can bring into stressful situations. So instead of bouncing back and forth between the highs and lows, we're able to we're able to face a negative situation and bring in greater inspiration to turn that negativity into a positive. And you talk about that kind of thing a lot, where, you know, one can look at negativity or adversity and look at it directly from a place of higher inspiration and creativity, actually shift that energy into, you know, a blessing for all. I mean, when it comes to, you know, exposing cabal and, you know, crimes against humanity, that's a little bit trickier, and that would, you know, that goes into a lot more. But just in our daily life, we have to know that greater resource is there, because if we don't, and we hang in the lower dimensions of Neptune, then we're allowing our creative channels to become infected by propaganda and narratives that we might not want, that we allow to flow into our outer environment, and we end up enabling the things that we don't want, because our creative energy is basically holding a belief or a delusion, and not breaking sort of the patterning or relationship with it to reach higher and strive for higher. And I know when you were, you know, telling some stories about being in prison, sort of the Jedi mind tricks, you know, here you are with like very kind of scary type individuals. Can you kind of give us an example of sort of how you can, and it doesn't, I don't like to always refer to planets, right? I mean, we can have this conversation and not bring up a planet, but it just was an extraordinary week. And yes, that is a way to describe some of what we're talking about, but it's not necessary. But just that whole idea of when you're in the moment where you could literally be in a lower octave or lower vibration that makes you easier prey, that makes you easy for somebody else to plug into or bully or harass or abuse, that there's a way that you worked it, that you could protect yourself in those moments. And I think, you know, that's something that we're all here to master as humans in our own way, but that was a really extreme situation. So can you tell us like maybe a little bit about your past and how just in the face of those kind of adversities, you were able to reach higher or find a resource beyond maybe what felt available at the time?
First of all, I love what you said, because you did it. You took tangible things that people are identified with and that they know. So it gives a point of reference for where they're at to where they have the potential to be, which opens up their minds. It opens up their heart. It gives them the idea that something greater is possible by focusing on it. But then when you get to there, it's like a plateau. And then you realize, okay, you're out there, now let go of even that. And the more we kind of get into that open-ended belief system mindset, where it's like, okay, we can expand outwardly and perceive things as they are, but don't limit yourself to a specific belief in something, or keep that belief system open-ended where you know there's more, then you're priming yourself for greater expansive states of awareness. And I feel it's so important what you're saying right now, because most people feel stuck. Oh, sorry, my thing just came up. They feel stuck because they don't realize their own essential nature is expansive. So back to your question. It's funny, I was having a conversation with my friend Martha about this the other day. Science, modern science essentially says the soul is in the body, right? But quantum sciences, because they've dissected a million brains and they've been like, wow, consciousness isn't in the brain. For so long, they thought it was actually somewhere in the brain, but it's not. You know, no matter how many brains they dissected, they found out that consciousness isn't in a specific locality. It's everywhere. It's animating it. So is the soul in the body, or is the body in the soul? And then when you think about it, you're like, okay, something's causing my heart to beat, something's causing my autonomic nervous system to function faster than the speed of light. There's obviously some kind of energy that is animating me, right? And we know now that the field, the energy that's causing the heart to beat, expands outward. It emits an electromagnetic field. So it's more like the body is inside of the soul. And when you allow the part of yourself that feels stuck or, you know, just lost or confused or all that, to be like, oh, my energy isn't actually stuck in this prison of self, it's animating it. So just by nature, we're expansive. And to fight against that by reliving the past and having a problem and you keep feeling bad, it's kind of irrational, really, when you think about it. You're like, wow, I'm out of sync with reality, because the physical universe, through our human perception as we know it, is in a state of expansion. So if our consciousness isn't in alignment with that state of expansion, then we're probably stuck. We're probably in this, and most people don't, it wasn't our fault. We've all been conditioned, right? We've all been born into a world and taught a bunch of things, and we didn't, now so many people are catching it and they're remembering and they're realizing, like, wait a minute, like, this isn't my language, this isn't my thoughts, all these things were taught to me, they're not mine, and we're catching it. We're like, well, who am I? And then with enough inquiry and trust into, I don't like what I'm seeing around me, I don't like what I'm feeling, but I know I'm greater than this, something happens. You start to expand, literally, because you are, again, the body is in the soul. The soul itself is already in an expansive state. Like, let me give you an example. And this is what I did, okay? This is how I got to it. Like, a human life cycle, just in comparison to the planets, is so short, right? Our human life cycle, we're born and we die, and it's over in the blink of an eye for the most part. Yet whatever this energy is that's animating it is obviously way more in alignment and part of a much greater cycle that for the most part, most of us are not focused on. And that is crazy, because whatever this is, right? Whatever it is that's happening, it's causing all this to happen. It's also what's causing these incomprehensibly complex ecosystems of nature to cooperate together. It's also what causes the solar system and the galaxy, and like, it's all interrelated. And so if we, as these people we temporarily in this short human life cycle think we are, if we're not allowing ourselves to become aware of this animating principle that we truly are, that we will be as soon as this life cycle is over, unless we become this like super breatharian hero, which we can, but most of us aren't, because we haven't tapped into that level of consciousness, but we have the opportunity to. So what I did was this. I recognized that I was around predatory men that I judged, that I had all kinds of criticisms. I criticized them. They were rotten in the beginning. They wanted to fight. They wanted to just do all kinds of terrible things because it's what they knew. And of course, I was afraid. I was in resistance. I was like, oh my God, I'm a victim. How could this be happening? And then I caught it. I just caught it. I was like, no. Every freaking thing in my life is messed up. How could it be? It's absurd. It's comedic. And I started considering that more and more. I'm like, wow, I'm really addicted to like being stressed out all the time. What if I kick that addiction? Just like I kicked heroin, just like I kicked all these other drugs. Like, if I had stopped being afraid or stressed out or thinking these same thoughts and feeling these same feelings, what would be beyond that? And so that's all I did. I just was like, that's not who I am. It's not who I am. It's who I was. It's part of my past, but it's not what I am. It's like, what am I? And that simple inquiry of what am I caused me to shift out of who I thought I was and started feeling what I was, meaning this energy.
I know what you mean. I mean, and that's really awesome. I mean, when we think of the term ascension, it's sometimes defined in a way that really doesn't empower people or help them to really understand what I feel it means. So, I mean, we're all going to kind of experience it in our own way, but maybe people can relate to the way I kind of relate to it. And what my research has basically like really shown me is we're moving from the personality matrix into the soul matrix, more recognition of what you're talking about and how interconnected we are with everything. We're co-creators of this experience. We are in a relationship with everything around us constantly. So what is the health of that relationship? And how are our perceptions, our beliefs, or versions of ourselves that we might be holding on to in response or reaction to something around us? How much is that dominating the potential of the moment? So, you know, as you were saying, we've been raised to just regurgitate information, take on sort of distortions of, you know, what it means to be human through a system that targets our self-esteem. This is what it means to be successful. This is what it means to be this or that. And this is good. This is bad. This is rebellious and unruly. And this is acceptable. And these are the people that are going to make the money and get the rewards in life. And so the mind screwery from day one is so immense to the point where the awakening to me is the realization of the parts of us that truly aren't us, the subpersonalities we've adopted in order to cope with our environment, in order to at least feel successful, to have a greater self-esteem, or to be in the fight or flight or fight mode, you know, kind of like up against it in an uncomfortable way. And so that kind of blossoming of consciousness beyond the personality matrix, to me, is what Ascension's all about. It changes the frequency of our throat chakra and the words that we choose to speak. And the frequency of those words and how that they can shift the moment is a lot different than responding in defense or fear or judgment or criticism or reaction. It literally can speak words that just like inspire people, or one has the capability of looking beyond their struggles, their programs, their wounds, and you can speak and connect with the person on a soul to soul level. Then you find soulmates, you experience synchronicities and the divine magic and flow of creation, because you're actually flowing with the planetary grid network that's, you know, based in Gaia and her circuitry, and the multidimensional cosmos, and the earth, air, fire, water, and ether, and how that links to the nucleic acids in our DNA, which are elemental, you know, helps us to witness like miracles. I mean, and that word sounds so extraordinary, but it really isn't. And I think medical doctors are getting their minds blown more and more all the time when they have people flatline, you know, in impossible circumstances to recover from, zero chance of recovery, and boom, they're like, we can't explain this. And those kind of stories are increasing. So that there's so many examples of how we as a humanity are going on beyond some of the dead sciences into the fullness of the science spiritual component and how they're truly connected.
It's so amazing, and it's so beautiful, because everything you said, when somebody's like, you know what, I'm going to do what you just said, I'm going to get into this space where my words resonate what I'm feeling, all that's really happening is you're making a choice to create this internal alignment. And it's super easy to do. And it's actually the only rational, normal, natural thing to do, which is like all the organs of the body are just syncopated to the beat of the heart. And your conscious mind's happy about it. And then when you speak, your words are imbued with that coherent force that is both animating your body and that is in relation to the rest of the physical universe. And so this is more real than what most people have unconsciously accepted as being real. And that's what we're witnessing now, like this big kind of conditioning thing, right? And we could really phase out of this. Like, if, you know, the view that I have of it is, this is all us. Like, this is literally about, we are the matrix as the individual. Like, we're the ones projecting all of this into reality. But that's an entire other thing that we can get into by breaking down the layers and levels of consciousness. But ultimately, when you take responsibility for saying, you know what, I don't care if all this shit seems to be happening around me, I'm going to choose to love myself, to have a good relationship with what I have. You know, maybe I'm in pain, maybe this hurts, maybe that hurts, maybe my relationships aren't great, maybe things are out of order, but I'm going to make a concerted effort to start feeling good about the things that I do have. You know, feeling gratitude for the fact you're alive. The more you do that, the more you start to engage your own creative principles, because that is creating, when you choose to have gratitude, when you choose to be grateful and feel feelings for no reason at all because you're alive, then this energy that's animating all of us is conscious, just like we think we're conscious, except for it's conscious at a level that is beyond any kind of level of consciousness we think we are. So when we demonstrate by internal action to ourselves, to our soul, that we are at a point where we're willing to integrate it, know it, have a relationship with it, then it starts to form a relationship with us. And that's what we're seeing happen. There's enough of us now who are like, okay, the journalistic model is breaking down, the medical model is breaking down, the media model is breaking down, the government model, every single system everywhere around the world is breaking down and falling apart, or it's in disarray, or it's all messed up, and all these bad guys want to do, everything is happening. So it's like, it's kind of like me in prison, where it was like, everything was just so messed up that it got to a point where I was like, wow, I'm letting myself be stressed out about this. When I look at it, it's just absurd. Like, I can't control any of that stuff. So why would I let it control me? And then boom, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, okay. Because what we are taught to think is rational from this conditioned, competitive human perspective is not the same level of rationality that is self-evident when we're in a aligned universal law perspective.
Oh yeah, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'd learned so much doing wilderness expedition trips and living on the road and out of a vehicle, trying to raise two kids pretty much on my own or with an unstable person for a portion of the time. It's amazing how perception shifts the way we interact with our reality. And I just remember being up against that all the time, where, yeah, the stress and anxiety seems to only allow me to notice the things that reinforce it. And all this incredible stuff that's passing by me, I'm not able to see it because I'm like in my survival chakra, or I'm just judging the situation, judging myself, and just moving out of all that and finding that other perspective. The miracles and the shifts and the amazing things that began to happen were incredible. And it was like that. That was one of the things I paid attention to in the wilderness, in the way that people were interacting with their environment and each other. Because there was like instant sort of like, nature's gonna, it's here to like teach, and it's here to remind, it's here to illuminate our soul essence and who we are and what we're really made of. And that interaction is so powerful. But there are certain people with certain attitudes that were very more about, and I guess just to make it easy to describe, just, more in the ego, very immature, just kind of, and those kind of people with those kind of personalities were always the ones that got taken out or evac. They had to leave. They couldn't handle it. Or they would have some sort of interaction with a poisonous creature. I'm not saying like if one has an injury or gets bitten by something, it's because they're holding the wrong vibration. Sometimes it's medicine. Sometimes adversity, is a way to help expand us and take us to the next level by putting us in a process of helping us to see our healing abilities. And why would we challenge ourselves unless we were pulling out of the treasure chest instead of giving our power away? It's like in those moments of adversity, we are being tasked to find our treasures, to find those greater resources within ourselves. And of course, when there's an emergency, it's good to have a doctor and people that know how to, deal with a broken leg or this and that. But the ultimate challenge is, to me, addressing what the human body is trying to tell us through disease, injury, illness, but also how we interact with our environment and what messages it's trying to tell us and what we can do with those messages. So of course, people are going to have different experiences, but I just found it so interesting, the way that, energy was working and what I was noticing with how people were interacting with nature. People that were in a tranquil sort of state of not posturing their ego or trying to take control of the situation or doing deceptive things, like stealing rations from other people, those that were really in a state of high integrity. And I got to experience that because, I live by the law of that, it just seemed like something really, really magical was going on. While other people were sort of battling the elements and battling the poisonous creatures, it was like the rattlesnakes were kind of surrounding some of us, totally not in a threatening way. Same with scorpions. And then whales and dolphins would dance around us because we had those kind of magical days. They weren't every day. And even, and those people just had that much of ability to create that as well. But I was really paying attention to vibration and thought forms, belief systems. What dimensional level of ourselves are we hanging out in, and what kind of field does that create around us? So the ones that are still in the personality matrix are more in the battle of duality, and those that can find more tranquility and it's sort of that unified field, it's just like it's a whole nother experience. And so the key though is, you know, to stay consistent and to self-correct when one kind of loses their center. But to me, it was the ultimate strengthening of what that takes, so that I could remember that and apply that to the challenges of the everyday. And I know that you've done that with the adversities that you've gone through. Now you can apply it to the here and now and help remind people of it, because it is a game changer. It's like the ability to be in a stressful situation and find the humor and make everybody comfortable around you, instead of be like all crazy and whacked and then everybody's all tense and nobody knows what to do. And then all of a sudden, you know, that's when we're prone to accidents and injuries, I feel. But I also see the blessing in sometimes those things happening. But it's just amazing if we can take the time in our everyday to notice when somebody says that and you immediately fire back, and that kind of all of a sudden can create a crappy day. But if somebody says something and you fire back with like love and self-love and acceptance and tolerance and patience, these things can smooth over so quick. Same thing when we interact with the world, and go beyond the surface layer, like you did with the prison folks, right? So just going to the store, being with somebody who might be wanting people to follow these rules and actually agrees with these rules. We can face those things, not from the personality matrix, but from these other dimensions of ourself. And to me, that is the whole basis of ascension, is that we operate on a creative level from more than we realize was there. And that to me is the great awakening, is locating those places and knowing what to do in the moment to really switch around a negative sort of situation and bring the jewel and the beauty and wisdom out of it, which will help us to not feel, oh, that's misfortune, or that's bad luck, or that's good luck, and I'm just blessed. It's like we're interacting with both constantly, but we have to have the mastery in the mind and in the heart in order to navigate it with joy in our heart, instead of the highs and lows, or feeling like a victim, or feeling resentful and bitter, or looping in the past, or also, you know, trying to control everything and being a control freak, you know? Any thoughts?
I love it. Yes, your flow is amazing. You just hit on like a million different things and made this idea of ascension that so many people are talking about so much more realistic, you know, because everybody has these like ideas about it, and it's this and it's that. But you said something really powerful towards the end of like looking at the highs and lows and thinking this is that. Part of human self-identification is that we ascribe meaning to things to give us a foundation to interact with ourselves in the world. But what happens is we become over-identified with those things. And so the very things that we keep giving meaning to start to hold us in. They literally have control over us because we've invested so much of our attention and energy into them being a certain thing. So that's almost like the sheep in the fence, right? Like it's, of course, it's easy to be a sheep in the fence and to be in there, and all the animals on the outside aren't going to get in for the most part, and you can be comfortable in there. But at some point, that fence is going to break, or at some point you're going to die, or at some point something's going to happen and you're going to be exposed to what's really happening beyond the fence. So it's facing that, confronting that, but doing it in a way where on the other side of your greatest fear is your greatest power. Like, and it's just always there. And so it's the willingness to confront this stuff, being willing to do it. You know, it's okay if you mess up. We all do. Believe me, I'm not happy and shiny and radiant every single moment. But this expansive feeling of coherence that I feel inside of me, I have spent enough time focusing on it to feel the source of where it comes from. And I know that that is more real than any of the things, any and all of the things that I've experienced in this short human incarnation. So I trust in its ability, just as it's blessing me with this life. I trust in it more than I do somebody or something or whatever, or all these things where everybody gets caught up and hung up on. And really a lot of it is just letting go of things as they appear to be. And then suddenly you realize you already know what they are. You know, there's this innate knowing that is present within us, that when we stop trying to understand things with the way we've been taught to perceive the world, according to competition with each other and all this stuff, then we just figure we know, we already know, it's already there. And then suddenly we have this beautiful relationship with ourself, with our soul, with our body. And from that place, we're like, oh yeah, you're doing the same thing. You know that too. Let's create, let's make something. So everybody knows, we know relationship is the next phase of how we all come together and make a better world. But it's a major trigger because it brings up everybody's conditioning. Like, we were all taught to compete with each other in school and institutions and all that stuff. And so everybody's like, you know, we feel like, okay, there is this empowerment, but there's all this wounding. So now we just have to come up against the edges of the wounding, trusting that this empowerment is on the other side. And then bit by bit, we find that our relationship with this energy that's animating us, with our body, and then with each other gets stronger and better. So that, to me, is a massive part of this ascension that's taking place from a more human level.
Oh, totally. Yeah, we really need to work this energy on a, human level. All the things that we might think can save us from the situation obviously exist within ourselves. And even though most people know, well, yeah, it doesn't make sense to expect somebody to do it for us. And most people can admit that that's really not the formula. But if we don't remind ourselves moment to moment or in our everyday, not like we have to keep our minds on it, but just hold that in our intent. This earth is the most benevolent being, and it's waiting for us to join forces because it's encoded with these ascension energies that advance us, because it's a great mother. It's nurturing its children to be the best that they can be. And of course, the masculine principle is integrated into that, and that cosmic trinity, is a part of it, and how that is a part of this particular planetary body. And it's a very unique planetary body, but the guidance and the teachings and the nurturing and connection that we can experience with the planetary consciousness and planetary body is so huge, because ultimately it's helping us to self-reflect. That's Native Americans and indigenous elders and tribes, that they understood how to use, herbs and medicine, and also the art of shamanic healing, or a lot of them have, and it has everything to do with the interaction with the natural world. There's an herb and thing for everything. There's nothing that the earth doesn't provide that can't assist us in our healing, let alone just the energetic healing that we can create for ourselves by just getting tuned in, balanced within ourselves, in our divine center, in our breath, and in the flow. I think it's just really hard, when people see, okay, people are getting jabbed. There's mandates, there's tyrannical forces that are, really trying to gain the upper hand. But don't you see this as the ultimate growth period and lesson for each individual within it? And in order to just know that, even though it might feel harsh and severe, it's pushing us to an edge that we might need. But I think what people are concerned about is that even if somebody is on the verge of awakening, if they do get that jab before they have that actual awakening experience, to the point where they're making decisions and from more discernment and greater education, do you feel that these things are irreversible, and that we need to just kind of let go, be a resource of information for people to educate themselves, but kind of let go and trust their greater soul journey, that even if they do make that decision, it's not necessarily going to be as doom and gloom as people make it sound? I mean, do you feel like the collective energy and just the energies of spirit and Gaia, the planetary body and what's available, can neutralize or sort of change the frequency of these energy signatures that cause digression? I feel that. So what are your thoughts?
I know you do. And that's the whole point of it, because here again, like, there's a lot of people out there saying a lot of things, right? And to me, like when I zoom out and I look at all this, I realize how little I actually know compared to what I don't know. I realize that most of what is truly happening, you know, this invisible energy that is animating my being, that's all around me, that's causing all these complex systems of nature to exist. I realize that 99.99999 all, pretty much all of known and unknown reality is happening outside of what I am most used to perceiving. So when I look at that, I'm like, what do I know? What do I think I know? Who am I to say something is going to be a certain way when in reality there is nothing but limitless possibility at all times, trying to get to us, through us, trying to awaken and open all of these stagnant, stuck cesspools of repetitious thought that we've become addicted to. It wants to liberate us of all of that. And all we have to do is just be willing initiates, ready to go along the flow, the journey of the ride of what this is. And come on, like, I know, believe me, everybody's saying all this stuff, but from a much deeper level, okay? And I know, believe me, my family, people are getting it, and it's, you know, the emotions come up and all that. But again, I keep coming back to this place. I'm like, I know, like, my life here has been so short. You know, what was I before I became Seth, this little person that was a baby in diapers, and now I'm this adult? Like, not much time has passed. What do I know compared to this soul that when I zoom out of Seth, it knows a lot. And when I'm in that place, this all feels perfect. It's like everything has been brought right up to this point because this greater aspect of who each and every one of us truly is coming through now, while all the systems that we're all used to around us are all in disarray. This greater, predominant, coherent force that makes up the bulk of known and unknown reality is making itself known through us, because enough of us are like, yeah, all this shit around, no, that's not it. There's enough of us that are like, this isn't it. This is not it. There's something way greater. We know it. And I think because enough of us have done that, it's almost like we've collapsed the wave function, you could say, in quantum physics. Like, enough of us have already felt beyond the appearance of this matrix grid that we actually are projecting, like a movie projector projects out of us. And we realize that we're like, oh my God, what if this is all just an unresolved aspect of this greater soul cycle that I could be aware of, but I'm not, because I'm stuck in a cesspool of thought and belief. And so this is what's happening. These things are being released. These old parts of us are being ripped away, and it's not comfortable. Obviously, like, this is why we feel these ups and downs. We're going through it. But enough of us are like, you know what? We are anchoring this in. Thy will shall be done. And we're standing firm, and we're going through the fire no matter what, you know? And so.
Totally. A lot of feedback I get from people is like, they, you know, felt like they fell into the wrong timeline or this or that. But, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, the healing, you know, process and the awakening process, you know, creates scenarios that we all experience differently, you know, and this is what I was kind of talking about the other day. Everybody wearing a mask is not thinking the same way about what they think of it. We don't know. We can look into their eyes. We can maybe intuit a little bit. Some might be absolutely confused and think this is ridiculous, but they're just doing their shopping and they're not going to make a huge fuss. Others might be like, yes, thank God, I feel protected. I feel safe. Other people might not know why, but sometimes I feel like people are allowing this because it's buffering them from the intense light codes coming in, and also the power of their own voice. And a lot of the things that we need to be looking at, there might be sort of the shyness or fear of, you know, our greater power, not so much the virus, but our greater potential. And I know people have written that, and there's been a lot of philosophies and thought forms based in, you know, how much we might be intimidated by our gifts and our greater abilities, that maybe it's a way to pause and kind of step back and be like, okay, what's going on here? So there might be those kind of people. And then those that refuse to wear them might get kicked out of the store, maybe get away with not wearing one, which is I refuse, to wear one, but I'm not going to make a big stink to the point of drama. But we're not all perceiving things in the same sort of way. But if it's authentic, it's got a truth frequency that allows for healing and regeneration. And that's what I love about, understanding that oneness is diversity and harmony. We can all see things a different way, but the question is that your authentic self, or is that a mind control program that needs to be broken down? Because there's a big difference between one or the other. And there's stages, of course. I mean, it's not about just being deprogrammed and all of a sudden no more ancestral patterns, no more programmings that you got from the TV when you were growing up, or what they're kind of trying to do. I mean, that's a process in and of itself. But it's just amazing though, that when you do have like a quick conversation with somebody, how much it's surprising what comes out of their mouth. Like, yeah, you got it right. This is absurd, right? You might hear from a person, and somebody else might just be like, stay 6 feet away from me. It's like multiple realities and different dimensional levels of awareness are going on simultaneously, around us. And it depends on what frequency wave or what dimensional level of awareness we choose to hold ourselves. And like we talked about before, when you were in prison, there are parts of you that they can't have. When we can stay inwardly free on some level, it doesn't matter how much they try and enslave us, because there's some things that they just cannot have. And if we protect that part of us and not suppress it or deny that it exists or neglect it, if we really bring it attention and we create a solid relationship with it, nothing can touch us. And I feel the control forces just fall away because they can't penetrate our auric field. So
yes, it's exactly, you said that to me the other night when we talked on the phone. It's like, that's the reality. Like, everybody's like, who feels like they're stuck in this system, everyone's afraid, but the reality is we are so powerful. And if we embody that and we support one another in remembering that, then these dark controllers or whatever, they're the ones that are going to be afraid, because they can't take from us what we truly are. And in fact, in many ways, they have to eventually go through this too. That's the beautiful thing about all this. Is it's a painful thing, but it's a beautiful thing, is that the universe is a perfect accounting system. It's not like, oh, okay, yeah, they're getting away with this now and all that's happening, but everything has an equal and or opposite frequency and or reaction. And as it returns to the source of where it all comes from, it gets equalized. And there's no way around that for anybody. So all of the harm and the wrongness that we perceive in the world around us that they're doing, it is accounted for on some level. But then the bigger question stems is like, okay, what if I were to take responsibility for that? Which is a huge question. Most people be like, what the frick does that even mean? That means, okay, I feel so aligned with this force in me that I'm knowing it. I'm in a state of knowing that is allowing me to experience the universal reality of what is animating this being. And I've developed such a conscious connection with it, which many have throughout time. Many have. This isn't anything new. This is something that every single human is capable of, because we all have the internal architecture to be able to embody these greater forces. But when you do that and you create that internal coherence within you, and it starts reflecting outwardly around you, then you realize maybe all these things are just attempting to test the barometer of your own evolutionary possibilities, your own evolutionary potential. And if you see it and you're disgusted and you're angry and you want to fight, okay, now you know you have all this guilt and anger and rage inside of you. But if you can be like, oh, okay, that's the old me. That's what I would normally do, is fight. And not because I have these emotional beliefs that are based upon the trauma of my past life being wounded. If you can see it like, okay, I'm not going to react to these things the way that I usually did. I'm going to be aware that that's what I might have done in the past. But now that I can feel, and just that I consciously know there's a greater force allowing me, gifting me this temporary human experience, what would it do? And when you bring that type of energy to whatever atrocity you witness in the world around you, watch how it can't take that away from you. And in fact, you effectuate it. And that's what happened to me when I was in prison. These same predatory guys that were like, wanted to fight and sexually assault and all the things. I just got to a place where I was like, I'm not going to react to any of that, you know, and almost like a very, like a, you know, kind of sly, like inner smirk, but not in a arrogant way, in a like, if you only knew what I was feeling inside and what I'm feeling connected to, you wouldn't be treating me the way I do, that kind of vibe. And I just refused to budge. I was like, I'm keeping in alignment with this greater frequency, and I'm not going to let their little childish shenanigans control, even if it's the prison guard yelling and banging and like, I'm not going to let any of that get to me, because I can see that for what it is. They are not in alignment. They're stuck in their own patterns of the past, and they're reliving their trauma and wounds, and you just see things more clearly. And when you do that and you hold that frequency, they eventually start to feel it. And that's what happened to me. And that was what turned everything around, because when I saw these guys who were like, you know, they're like, come on, man, let's go. You know, like all of a sudden they're like, wow.
Like, give me a hug, bro. No.
Yeah, literally like that. And so what, and you know, at first I was like, really? Is this really happening? You know, but it kept happening. And these are inner city guys, right? These are guys that are, society would term the dregs of society, right? They're certainly not people who are practicing Kundalini yoga or any spiritual discipline or high levels of Taoism or really anything for the most part. These are guys that are like dealing crack and doing whatever. And like, and they are like, wow. They're like, wow, like what is that feeling? And bit by bit, because at first I was like, are they actually feeling it? But because I had so much time to just be in this space, and I had already decided, like I opened up enough of the blockages and pathways and the kind of stagnation that you were talking about earlier to just allow it to be there. And once it's there and you feel it and you're having this tangible experience of it, then letting it go is just you digressing back into a past thought or belief. And you get better and better at catching yourself when you do that, because the feeling of being in alignment feels so good. Like it feels like a miracle, literally.
Yeah.
You feel in love with your life. Your body, which is addicted to producing stress hormones, starts producing feelings of like, wow, this is amazing. Just like when we were kids, you know, and you're like, there's awe and wonder and all this beauty. And that is a frequency that when enough of us embody and sustain together, which is why you and I are doing this, essentially, it'll change everything. Because I know I've witnessed it, many others have too. It changes everything.
Oh, totally. Yep. And this is the basis of what I've been, you know, really, you know, sharing for a long time about the spectrum of frequency, the different levels of awareness that we can hold, which changes the way we experience our outer environment. And also it influences the outcomes. I mean, if we're functioning from a place of fear and survival, the outcome to an interaction could lead to drama and a fight, like we were talking about. Being in this, you know, kind of other zone, which that person holds within themselves, they just might not be familiar with it. A person might never have seen that or nurtured it when they were growing up, of course. To feel that hello, you know, like a spirit to spirit, soul to soul sort of recognition, can melt away the most unbelievable systems of control and also dangerous tendencies of, you know, individuals that are, you know, still kind of locked into it. And, you know, once you arrive, it's hard to kind of like go back. I mean, these are sort of epiphanies and awakenings that really stick with a person because it feels so much better. And next time we do this public show, I'd love to talk about, you know, the brain chemicals and addiction to stress and this and that. I know we could continue to talk, but I'm thinking, you know, we'll probably do half hour to an hour and then have, you know, pretty lengthy Q&As. And it sort of depends. We don't have to limit it to a certain, you know, time frame, but I'm thinking it might be good to wrap it up. I'm just really excited to work this kind of energy with you. I know that being able to connect into this, even though I have my own way of doing it in my everyday life. It's certainly awesome to have company because it's very easy to just, I don't know, sometimes people feel very alone in trying to maintain this sort of, connection. And we're not always surrounded by people that are there with us. So the Q&A with the cosmic subscriber thing allows you to just, come along, raise your hand. You can ask Seth or I a question. I have my cards. I have a database with, astro info, and I can do, quick mini readings, which I've done for subscribers. But now with, Seth doing a lot of these with me, and me liking to answer questions outside of using those tools and modalities, you can ask us anything. And if you have a question for both of us, we'll just take turns. And it's also a chance for you to share what you're going through. It's not just like about a question. You might want to talk about the last week that you had, or a concern about a family member, or, what is really, really like getting at you or stressing you out. And we can see what kind of comes through to be able to support and assist. Because this is really about building community, knowing we're not alone, knowing that growing this kind of thing like amps up something incredibly positive in the collective consciousness. And it is so needed that we hold each other closely, but also with, our sovereignty intact and boundaries where needed. But that we recognize that this is a huge priority for us right now. And this is going to counteract the divide and conquer agendas, because it has nothing to do with labels. It has nothing to do with political beliefs. You come as you are. Doesn't matter. It's deeper, and this is the level that we exist with, or exist upon, is to meet you at that deeper level. So anyway, any thoughts about tonight, or
I love it. You said, I mean, we're here to bring the best out in another and in each other, and it's like Rupert Sheldrake and morphic fields and the 100th monkey effect, right? Like that's kind of where we're gearing this. If enough people come together with similar intentions or a like frequency, and this willingness to shed their old skin, right, and grow into the new potential that we all know is possible, then it's not going to take very many of us to really get to this place where we trust how powerful we actually are, and then start working, interacting, co-creating, and doing things together at a scale that far outweighs all the pain and suffering and everything that's been the predominant reflection on this planet up until this point. This is what we're talking about, reversing. And when you get in alignment with what you truly are, you have no doubts that that's possible. So before we close out, though, maybe we should answer just a question or two just from somebody.
I see it has this is what I need to figure out, and we'll have it figured out for next time, because you don't have to just be a subscriber, but it's way more interactive. We go way more in depth, of course, when we have the call, which is going to be 5 p.m. Mountain Time today. And if you're able to sign up, I'll keep an eye on the new signups, and I'll get you the Zoom link so that you can join us at 5 Mountain Time, which is in 2 hours. And sorry, this is sort of short notice. We'll be kind of promoting in advance, so it's not like, oh, I didn't even know this was going on. So this is all going to get more refined.
And we're going to get people too. We're going to be bringing people. Like if we talk about something, we're going to find experts in that field, like you said, like brain chemistry, neurobiology. We'll find people to bring on too.
Yeah. So we're going to have a public roundtable. Well, for everybody, roundtables, and it's going to be a discussion where we all kind of share equally and ask each other questions, sort of like Seth and I did today. It kind of depends. I mean, we'll just sort of intuit what feels right and what feels best. So we'll have that, and people like Dr. Northrup and people like Mike Adams might join us as our first guests. And some people will join us also in the subscriber group in the Q&A, and you can get to know them more closely and more personal. I've done that with my, Elena and others. And there's going to just be so much more available. So I feel like it's a really worthwhile subscription. You'll get more than your money's worth, I feel. But sometimes there's, tech issues. So, there's Telegram channels so that people can find, multiple ways to make sure that you're not missing anything that might be getting sent that ends up in spam, because that happens sometimes with the newsletters. But we'll give people more of an idea about that. We don't have a set time and day just yet, but we're thinking Thursdays for the public thing. And we're just going to be bringing on expertise and just really getting our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical health intact, because this vessel and our consciousness is what the awakening to me is all about. Learning to harness our creative energies and power, learning to come together with mutual love and respect, working on our triggers, working on the parts of us that might sabotage good relationships and also sabotage our missions due to shyness or insecurities, you know, to really look deep into all that, because we're used to a world where, you know, we don't want people to know that. That might seem weak. No, there's great strength in being raw, being transparent, and being willing. And this is the time to really empower that. And I'm just so grateful to you, Seth. We'll get that link out. And yes, and I just have to figure out a way to have the ability to answer questions. I guess I could put it on mute because there's sort of a, yeah, we'll figure that out, but we'll interact more on these kind of shows and make sure that we're answering questions. And, you know, if people want to put in the comments, particular themes that are incredibly important to them, we'll take a look at that. But yeah, any final words? And hopefully we'll see you at 5 tonight. If not, you know, we'll see you on these shows that we're going to be doing on a regular basis. And any final words, Seth?
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for doing it. I know, like everybody I know is going through it right now. So it's like showing up is really what it's about. And when we show up for ourselves in that way, which is ultimately what we're encouraging people to do, it makes it so much easier to show up for everybody and everything else. And then eventually it becomes an unmovable force because it is what's actually happening. All this other temporary chaos is a very small aspect of what's happening. Coherence, the earth, in alignment with the solar system, in alignment with the galaxy, in alignment with the universe, and all of the unseen dimensions, that is coherence. That is more predominant than everything else. So this chaos that we're all temporarily stuck in is just that. It's temporary. And that's what we're going to get everybody out of so that we can play in all of these realms and inspire each other and bring out the best in each other.
Yes, absolutely. And things on a ground level too. What can we do locally? What, you know, things surrounding healing centers and people that have a particular mission or calling that are having a hard time maybe launching it will support you. And I've had people do PowerPoints that have never done anything public before, you know, kind of to bring them out of their shell and to get sort of warmed up to, you know, presenting, you know, what your mission is, what your passion is. We'll also hold space for that. So anyway, I could keep talking to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again later on today, Seth. So grateful. And everybody, thank you so much. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll text you in just a sec, okay?